Just a month ago, my younger brother, Ethan, married the love of his life, Isabella. Their wedding was the epitome of elegance and class, a day filled with joy, love, and countless cherished memories. Ethan, being the kind and thoughtful man he is, had been looking forward to this day for years. The way he spoke about Isabella, you could tell he adored her with every fiber of his being. Everyone who knew Ethan could see how much he was smitten by his bride. But what unfolded after their nuptials shook my entire family to its core. Ethan had always been an easygoing and compassionate person. He loved his family deeply, and over the years, I watched him grow into someone whose values seemed impenetrable. He had never been one to make rash decisions, especially when it came to love. But when it came to Isabella, it was different. It was as if the stars had aligned, and he found someone who, in his eyes, was flawless. For months, I watched the way his eyes lit up when he spoke about her, the subtle adoration in every word, and the way he hung on her every thought. But something I didn't expect was the secretive side of their relationship that started to unfurl in the weeks before the wedding. Isabella, on the surface, seemed like a charming, poised woman. Her beauty was striking, and she carried herself with an air of grace that seemed to be admired by everyone. But behind that polished exterior, I began to notice small things, comments here and there that didn't sit right with me. It wasn't until after the wedding that I started to piece together a different picture, one that chilled me to my core. From the outset, Ethan and Isabella had agreed to a child-free wedding. This was clearly stated in their invitations and reiterated in their planning. It wasn't an unusual request, and most of our family and friends respected their wishes. However, just a couple of weeks before the wedding, Ethan gave me a call that caught me completely off guard. He said, "Mia, I know our wedding is supposed to be child-free, but I want to make an exception for Lily. Lily, my 8-year-old daughter, was born with cerebral palsy, and while her condition presented many challenges, she was a bright, cheerful child with an infectious smile. The bond she shared with her uncle Ethan was unbreakable." My throat tightened as Ethan explained his reasons. "I can't imagine the day without her there. She means so much to me, and I know it would mean the world to her to be a part of it," he said. Tears welled up in my eyes as I listened to him. "Are you sure? I don't want to impose or make things difficult for you and Isabella," I replied, cautiously. "Isabella and I talked about it," Ethan assured me. "She's on board. We'd love for Lily to be our flower girl." Relieved and touched, I agreed. Lily adored her uncle, and the opportunity to be included in such a significant event in his life would mean everything to her. But as the days passed, small red flags began to emerge. Isabella reached out to me a few days after Ethan's call. While she initially expressed excitement about having Lily as their flower girl, her tone quickly shifted. She began listing conditions for Lily's participation, starting with her outfit. "I want her dress to align perfectly with the theme," Isabella explained. "Beige or cream, something understated and elegant. And make sure the wheelchair doesn't stand out too much. It should blend in with the decor." The comment about Lily's wheelchair stung, but I brushed it off. After all, weddings often come with exacting standards. I assured Isabella to first find an appropriate dress and make sure everything met her expectations. I spent hours shopping for the perfect dress and finally found a beautiful beige gown that was simple yet elegant. I sent Isabella a picture, hoping for her approval. Her response came swiftly. "It's too plain. Maybe something with a hint of color, but nothing garish." Frustration bubbled under my skin. Wasn't beige exactly what she had asked for? Nonetheless, I went back to the drawing board and found another dress, almost identical to the first but with a subtle hint of pink. This time, Isabella grudgingly approved. On the day of the wedding, Lily looked radiant. Her face beamed with happiness as she wheeled herself down the aisle, scattering petals. The guests' reactions were overwhelmingly positive. People whispered compliments, and a few even teared up at the sight of her determination and grace. But when I glanced at Isabella, her expression was far from pleased. She barely concealed her disdain, rolling her eyes as Lily passed by. The ceremony proceeded without further incident, and for a moment, I thought perhaps I had imagined Isabella's coldness. During the photo session, Ethan made a point to include Lily in every family picture. He even lifted her out of her wheelchair for a special shot, holding her in his arms like she was the most precious thing in the world. But Isabella's patience was visibly wearing thin. She sighed loudly and muttered under her breath, her irritation apparent to anyone paying attention. Later, when Ethan and Lily posed for a photo together, Isabella pulled me aside. Her voice was polite but clipped. Can you take Lily to sit with your parents? We need to take some photos with just immediate family. I obliged, though her tone left a sour taste in my mouth. As I wheeled Lily away, I couldn't help but feel a pang of unease. Something about Isabella's demeanor didn't sit right with me. Still, I pushed those thoughts aside. It was Ethan's day, and I didn't want to cause any unnecessary drama. The true nightmare began after the wedding. 2 weeks later, Ethan and Isabella returned from their honeymoon and invited the family over for lunch. It was meant to be a casual gathering, but the tension in the air was palpable. Isabella barely acknowledged Lily, her forced smiles and curt responses a stark contrast to Ethan's enthusiastic interactions with my daughter. As lunch wound down, Isabella pulled me aside. "We need to talk," she said, leading me into a quiet room. I followed her, my stomach twisting into knots. Once the door closed, she didn't mince words. "I've been reviewing the wedding photos, and there's a problem," she began, her tone icy. "What kind of problem?" I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling about where this was going. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through the pictures. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a photo where Lily's wheelchair was prominently visible. "It completely ruins the aesthetic. The wheelchair is such an eyesore." Her words hit me like a slap to the face. I stared at her, speechless. Before I could respond, she continued. "I've decided to have the photos edited. The wheelchair needs to be removed, or better yet, Lily could be cropped out entirely. You should cover the cost since it's your daughter." My hands trembled with anger. "You want to erase my daughter from the wedding photos? Are you out of your mind?" I demanded. Isabella crossed her arms. "It's not personal. It's about preserving the integrity of the photos. Everyone agrees they'd look better without distractions." The audacity of her words was staggering. I felt a storm of emotions brewing inside me: anger, disbelief, hurt. "Lily is not a distraction. She's family," I said, my voice shaking. The argument escalated quickly. Isabella accused me of using Lily to garner sympathy and attention, claiming that her presence had overshadowed the bride on her own wedding day. I was so furious I could barely see straight. Just as I was about to retort, the door burst open, and there stood Ethan, his face a mask of fury. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. Isabella froze, her face pale. "Ethan, I can explain," she began, but he cut her off. "I heard everything," he said, his voice cold. "How dare you talk about Lily like that? She's my niece, and I love her more than anything. If you can't accept her, then maybe you're the one who doesn't belong in this family." The room fell silent. Isabella's eyes filled with tears, but Ethan's resolve didn't waver. "Pack your things," he said firmly. "We're done." The rest of the family, who had gathered outside the room during the confrontation, looked on in stunned silence. Ethan's decision was final. Isabella left that day, and our family's bond grew stronger in the aftermath. Ethan's unwavering support for Lily reaffirmed what I already knew: love and acceptance always triumph over ignorance and cruelty. The weeks that followed were filled with strange and unsettling revelations. Word spread quickly throughout the family, and people who had known Isabella began to share unsettling details about her behavior in past. A former colleague of hers confided that Isabella had once claimed her dislike for children and even went as far as to say that she found people with disabilities off-putting. Another family friend told me that Isabella's family had once tried to set her up with a man who had a terminal illness, and she had broken off the relationship just days before his passing because she couldn't handle the burden. But what truly sent shivers down my spine was a conversation I overheard between Ethan and his best friend, Marcus. It was a late-night chat, the kind where confidences are shared. I wasn't supposed to be eavesdropping, but the words I overheard made my blood run cold. "I've been thinking a lot about Isabella," Ethan said, his voice laced with frustration. "I'm starting to wonder if I ever really knew her at all. The things she said about Lily. It's like I married a stranger." Marcus's voice was filled with concern. "You're not the first person to say that. Some of the guys who know her think she's been hiding something big." "What do you mean?" Ethan asked, his curiosity piqued. Marcus hesitated. "There are rumors, man. Rumors about Isabella's past. Some people think she's been involved with some shady stuff. And honestly, the way she treated Lily. I'm starting to think you dodged a bullet. Maybe you don't want to know the whole truth." I never did find out what Marcus was alluding to, but in the weeks that followed, the cracks in Isabella's carefully constructed facade became more apparent. Ethan's decision to cut ties with her was the right one. And while the pain of the wedding, an event that should have been joyous, lingered, our family came out stronger than before. We rallied around each other, fortified by love, respect, and a profound sense of loyalty. The days turned into weeks, and life seemed to return to some semblance of normal. Ethan, despite the heartache from his short-lived marriage, began to find peace. His relationship with Lily grew even stronger, and seeing her happy was the greatest comfort for him. I watched as he threw himself back into his work, slowly healing from the emotional wounds Isabella had left. But the sense of unease lingered. Isabella's absence didn't mean she had truly vanished from our lives. It felt like a shadow was still looming over us, a constant reminder of the woman who had manipulated her way into our family, only to show her true colors when the spotlight shone on her. Then came the letter. It arrived late one evening, sealed in an expensive envelope. I immediately recognized the elegant, swirling handwriting. It was Isabella's. My heart skipped a beat as I handed the letter to Ethan, whose face immediately hardened. He tore open the envelope, his hands trembling slightly, and read aloud the words that had the power to send chills down my spine. Dear Ethan, I know you are angry and hurt. What happened between us was a misunderstanding, a mistake I deeply regret. I understand that you have been struggling with everything that's happened, and I want you to know that I never intended to hurt Lily. I thought if I could just fix the way things were going, smooth out the edges, that everything would be perfect. But I made the wrong choices. I can't erase the past, but I can try to make amends. If you are willing to listen, I would like to explain myself. I was only trying to help us create the life we both envisioned, a life that was free from complications. But now, I see the error in my ways. I hope we can sit down, talk, and maybe find a way to move forward. I miss you, and I miss us. Please call me when you're ready. Yours, Isabella. I looked at Ethan, who was staring at the letter in stunned silence. His jaw was clenched tight, his hand shaking with fury. Don't call her, I said, my voice firm, though I could sense the tremor in my own chest. This is exactly what she does. She manipulates, she gaslights, she tries to make you think you're the one in the wrong. Don't fall for it. Ethan's gaze flickered up to meet mine, his eyes filled with conflict. I don't know what to think anymore, Mia. I loved her. I thought she was the one. But now, I feel like I don't even know who she really is. I reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. You don't owe her anything, Ethan. She showed you who she really is. You saw her true nature, and she can't take that back. But deep down, I could see that the seed of doubt had been planted. Ethan had loved Isabella so deeply, and while he was furious with her, a part of him still wished things had worked out. That part of him wasn't ready to close the door entirely. The next few days were torturous. Ethan seemed torn, wrestling with the temptation to forgive Isabella, despite everything. I could tell that the pressure was building within him, and I could see it in his eyes whenever he looked at Lily. He was afraid that if he didn't reach out to Isabella, he might lose something he couldn't get back. But just when I thought he might cave, the truth came to light in a way none of us could have ever imagined. It was a Friday afternoon when the phone call came. The voice on the other end was shaky and panicked, one I didn't immediately recognize. Mia? It's Marcus. You need to listen to me. Something's happened. You need to warn Ethan. My heart began to pound. What's going on, Marcus? I don't know how to say this, but I've found something. I've been digging into Isabella's past, I don't know, trying to figure out what went wrong. And Mia, what I found, what I know, changes everything. I could hear the urgency in his voice. What do you mean? What did you find? There's a man. A man she's been hiding. He's not just some ex, Mia. He's someone with a violent history. His name is Adrian Scott. And I think Isabella's been using him. She's in deep with him, Mia. I've traced some of their communication. I'm afraid she might be in danger, but I'm also afraid of what she could do. Danger? I repeated, feeling the ground beneath me shift. What are you saying, Marcus? Isabella is more dangerous than you think. She's been manipulating Ethan, but I don't think it was just about him. I think she had a bigger plan. Adrian Scott. He's a criminal, Mia. A dangerous one. I think Isabella has been involved in something that could destroy your family. You have to tell Ethan not to call her back. It's too late for that. The words hit me like a tidal wave. My stomach turned as Marcus detailed more about Adrian Scott, a man with connections to the underground criminal world. I couldn't fathom how Isabella, with her seemingly perfect exterior, could be tangled up in such darkness. Yet everything Marcus said made sense, the coldness she had displayed, the manipulation, the subtle ways she had tried to push Lily out of the picture. I immediately rushed to find Ethan. I told him everything Marcus had shared. The more he listened, the more the color drained from his face. "No," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "This can't be real. This isn't her." "I wish it wasn't, Ethan," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I think you need to accept it. Isabella is dangerous." For the first time in weeks, I saw Ethan truly break. His strong facade cracked as he realized that the woman he had loved, the woman he had thought was his soulmate, was nothing more than a clever facade. The realization was devastating. The next few days were a blur. We reported everything to the authorities, including Adrian Scott's name, hoping they could track him down before anything worse happened. The investigation into Isabella and her connections with Scott unraveled an even darker web of lies. It turned out that she had been using her marriage to Ethan as a cover, hiding from her criminal connections while trying to manipulate him into doing her bidding. She had never truly loved him. But what frightened me the most was that we were still unsure whether Isabella was the victim or the perpetrator in this tangled mess. Was she in danger, or was she playing a much darker game? The authorities eventually located Adrian Scott, and after a high-speed chase and a series of arrests, Isabella was caught, along with the evidence of her involvement in several illegal activities. But as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Isabella wasn't merely a pawn in the game. She was the mastermind. She had orchestrated her marriage to Ethan in part as a distraction, as a way to protect herself from the law, using him and his family as a shield. Ethan's world was shattered. The woman he had once thought was his everything had been using him, manipulating him into a web of lies that had been spun long before they met. The last time I saw Isabella was in a courtroom, where she stood facing the consequences of her actions. She looked nothing like the woman Ethan had married, no longer the poised bride, but a cold, calculating criminal who had been playing a dangerous game all along. As for Ethan, though he was devastated by the betrayal, he found solace in knowing the truth. He never called Isabella back, and that choice, in the end, saved not only him but all of us. The darkness she had brought into our lives had lifted, and with it, the weight of the years he had spent under her spell. We moved forward, stronger and more united than ever. And though the scars of the past would never fully disappear, we knew we had emerged from the nightmare as a family, bound together by love, resilience, and the unwavering promise that we would never let darkness take root again. If you enjoyed this thrilling journey, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on the latest content. Share this story with your friends, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay tuned for more suspenseful adventures.